Okay, so here's what we're going to work on today. We're going to talk about all about the spot colors and what are these spot colors. For designers and offset printers, they mean one thing, and for those of us doing digital production, it actually has a different meaning in many cases. So we have to understand how people work with these things we call spot colors. So along with that, how do we specify these correctly within our applications? This is, say, Illustrator, Corel, some cases InDesign, other applications like that. How do we specify these colors in Versaworks to make sure that we're going to see the accurate color representation within the RIP on our output? Also, we have a tool called Pantone Color Manager that is a great tool for getting accurate CMYK values to match these colors. We've also got another tool called the i1 Pro that we can use to actually measure these colors directly into Versaworks to get a very accurate measurement that will be used in a more automated workflow. And we're going to talk about the different strategies in a moment. Also, we're going to talk about pre-flighting your files. So we're going to use the media profiles that we created previously in a previous session, or the media profiles that are provided by Roland or your media manufacturer, to be able to better soft-proof or view accurately on your screen what these colors are going to look like on output. And we can use Pantone Color Manager as a tool to pre-flight these colors as well, which is going to give us some warnings as to which colors might be outside of the color range or the color gamut of my printer. So what are these spot colors? Well, the most common spot color system we use in North America, in fact around the world, is called the Pantone Matching System. This system is built on actually taking 14 base colors. These are separate inks that are mixed in different ways to create that multitude of colors that's in your Pantone book. It's, in a lot of our production we look at CMYK printing, where we're mixing cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And we can get a decent range of colors from our printers with just those 4 colors. But to get a much wider range of colors, if we mix from these 14 different colors, we can get some very saturated reds and oranges and purples that are beyond the range of what a traditional printing press can give us with CMYK. However, inkjet can often do a pretty good job of simulating a lot of these colors. Not all of them, but more so than a traditional inkjet, or a traditional offset press. So in a file, when a designer is building a document, whether it's a banner, a sign, or a document for printing, such as a annual report or whatnot, they have the option to define colors either as CMYK builds. This is what you see here on the right side. This is what we call a process color. This is where we're going to use the colors that are available on our printing press, or in our case, the inkjet printer. And we define exactly how much cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to mix at the printer to get the appearance of this color, in this case an orange. The spot color method is where we're going to define what we call a named color or a spot color, where it actually, when this is used with a conventional printing press, this would cause a separate plate to be made for that press, and so they would run that press with cyan, magenta, yellow, black, plus this additional ink. And this ink would be mixed separately out of those 14 colors and loaded on the press as another ink. Okay? So very different methods for conventional printing, and for our case in digital, they're going to have a strong impact on what we're trying to do here. There's a Pantone book called the Pantone Bridge. It's a very good book to have. Designers should have this so they understand the limits of what they're trying to design. And it's a good idea for those of us working in digital print to have one of these on hand as well, so that we can see when a designer specifies a spot color, what are they expecting? And if they specify that spot color as a CMYK build, what can we expect to match? So let's take a look at what's in this Pantone Bridge book. This is a sample page out of the Bridge, and you'll see where I've got item 1 with a big circle up there. That's showing us that spot color or solid color that we talked about. That's what happens when they mix that ink separately off the press and then load it as a separate color on that press. And if they print that, it should look like this value here. Okay. Next to that, where you see we've got 2, on the right side column, we see there are representations of the CMYK build of that color. So how close can we get to matching that solid color in just CMYK of an offset press? And you can see in this case, the left side and right side, some cases they're kind of close, some cases not very close. This is the limitation of an offset press. With your inkjet printers, there are some media and ink combinations where you will actually do a better job of matching that left column, the solid color column, than what that offset press could achieve. Now there's also another item on here. If people are designing in sRGB, you can get those values here where you see the number 3. Okay, and in some cases that's not a bad way to work. But today we're going to talk primarily about the difference between CMYK process versus the solid inks. Okay. Now there's 3 spot color matching strategies within Versaworks that we're going to talk about. Okay. The first one we're not going to talk much about today. Roland has documentation on this, and they have other presentations that talk about this. And this is the Roland color system. It's a good system, and it's all about finding that media optimized CMYK. What's the best mix of CMYK that we can get to match this color sample on the specific ink, on that specific printer with that media. It amounts to printing out a physical swatch palette, and you can see a small representation here in the upper right-hand corner, and then taking your customers' colors they want to match and finding the color in this chart that most closely matches, and then identifying in your application, using that color name in the application. Now the trick here is you're going to have to look at every job, and you'll have to do this color replacement or fix these colors within each job. It'll give you very good results, but it does require a job-by-job correction. Another option is the Pantone Color Manager. Again, it's based on the same principle as Media Optimized CMYK, where we're going to try to find that best build. We take a slightly different approach to this, where we're going to actually use a piece of software called Pantone Color Manager, and we're going to use the ICC profiles that are provided for your media or you've created for your media, and with those 2 tools, we're going to find out what's the best CMYK build to use in the RIP. This way, we will build a library of colors within the RIP that is, it will be media specific. And the trick there is you will need to select the correct library when you need to match these colors on a specific media. It's just a little different approach than what we do with the Roland color system. Depending on your workflow, would determine which one works best for you. Again, the Roland color system would require you making changes within each job before you submit them to the RIP. With the Pantone Color Manager solution we're going to talk about here in a moment, it means you'll build the library into the RIP, but you'll need to make sure to select that library before you send that work. Slightly more automated, but again, you still have to make sure you've got the right colors in the right places. The last thing we're going to talk about today is another solution where we can take a device like the i1 Pro, you see that pictured here on the right, and we can actually measure these colors directly into Versaworks, and we can build a library that will work with any and every media that you have a profile for in the RIP. This is the most elegant solution because you won't have to select libraries for the jobs, and you won't have to go in and do changes in color definitions within your files. So we're going to talk about the last two solutions here today. So I'm going to jump out of this and we're going to look at our applications. Okay? All right, first, to do this work, we need to know where are these ICC profiles that I keep talking about, because you're going to need to have these installed on your system, and you'll be using them in Illustrator and in the Pantone Color Manager tool. Okay, so on the RIP station, you'll find those located in this directory. We're going to go to My Computer. You go to the your Drive C, into Program Files, and we're going to locate the Roland Versaworks. And in this folder, we've got a Profiles folder. And in here, these are sorted out by the printer name. Okay, so the printer I'm working with is going to be located right in here in the VersaCam folder. And here it's sorted out by the ink types. And if I'm running this ink type, I can look in here and I see a lot of profiles listed in here. I can view this by list to see the names more easily. Okay, and I see these descriptive names. They're kind of encoded in here. Okay, so when I'm working within Versaworks, let's take a look here. I can select a media within the queue, and let's take a look at this. So I bring this up, and there we go. If I select on my Quality tab, and I've got my media selected by name up here, right down here it tells me the ICC profile that we're going to use when printing to this generic vinyl. Okay? That profile lives in this list. I just need to match that name up with the name in this list. If I'm working on Illustrator from another computer system on my network, I can copy these profiles that I need to, say, a server, and then copy them over to that other system and install them on that design workstation so that I can use it the way we're describing today. Once you copy it over there, it's actually quite easy to install. You simply right-click on the profile that you want to install. It says Install Profile, and it's actually going to put that directly into the location within your system folder that the operating system needs to store these ICC profiles. The Adobe applications will look in that location. The Pantone application we're looking at will also look in that location. So any profiles you want to use with Adobe or Pantone software, you'll need to make sure are installed on your system. And again, simply right-click on it and select Install Profile. Okay. So we're going to close that. Okay. So first step, install the profile so our applications can work with it. Now, let's take a look at Illustrator. And here I actually already have a file opened. And this little button right here will show me all of the spot colors that are in that file. And I can see a list here of the spot colors that actually are used right here. Now, oftentimes you'll see this listed in this kind of view. You can't really get a whole lot of information there. If you hover over it for a while, it will give you a little echo bar naming the color. But I like to see that better. I like the large list view. It'll show me exactly what colors are used in here by name. Okay. Now there's some other important information here. We've got these little icons here that many people overlook. These icons tell me what kind of color these are. And you can see here I got this little icon, shows a little, looks like a spot there in a box. Well, that's telling me that this is a spot color. That's very important. This means that when I send this color to the RIP, if the RIP is configured correctly, it will use its spot color libraries. Okay? Now, some designers might build a file like this other example I have. I'm going to click on another one here. This brings up, it's the same file, okay, but it's built incorrectly. And you can see here these boxes are kind of grayed here. Okay? That's telling me these are process colors. If I double click on that, I can see this is built as a process color, and here's the CMYK values. This is exactly what the RIP would use. Okay? That's not a good thing. If I go back to my other file, double click on there, I can see it's built as a spot color. Okay? That's the way we want these built. Okay, so far I haven't done any changes to the file, and that's one nice thing here is that if the file's built correctly, if it's got colors defined as spot colors, I won't need to change anything within the customer file. I just leave these as they are. Okay? Now, while we're in here, we should talk a little bit about previews. If I click on this, what we call flyout menu at the top here, and I go to spot colors, I want to make sure this is checked here is use the LABE values. What that does is LABE, or LABE, is a color description of what the color should look like. CMYK is based on the formula to match that, and it's not as accurate to preview spot colors as CMYK. So we're going to make sure that's at LABE, and it is. And so this preview on my screen, if I'm working on a calibrated display, is going to be a pretty good approximation of our output. Okay? So here we've got our file. It's got spot colors placed in it. These are the spot colors that we're using, and we double checked and make sure they're all spots. Now, we need to prepare the RIP to run this job. So we're going to use something called Pantone Color Manager. This software is included free with the purchase of any new Pantone Plus book, and I have to recommend that you purchase these books at least, preferably on an annual basis. Think of it this way. If you look at prints that you've done a year ago, there's a chance that the inks have faded and the vinyl or the paper you printed on has turned yellow. These things happen. These books are similar to that. From usage and exposure to sunlight, the inks will degrade, they'll fade, and the paper will, again, exposed to UV light, will start to yellow. So if you want accurate books, you need to keep them fresh. Okay? But so the software comes with those books, and what we see here is one of those books, a representation. We can scroll down through this list and we see all the colors in the same order they are in the book. So if you have your physical book in front of you, you can fan through and you can find those pages and they match just like this. We've got a number of books included in here. We've got, in this case, a solid coded. We've got solid uncoded. And a number of others. Okay, I'm going to go back to the solid coded. There we go. And some interesting things we can see in this view. We can see these little exclamation points on some of these colors we see here, right? Well, if I double click on that, I get a little information, and it tells me here this color, Pantone 7551, actually is beyond what my monitor can show me accurately. That tells me I can't trust this preview completely. It's not an accurate representation. That color is actually beyond what my display can show me. So I have to be careful about that judgment. Doesn't mean I can't print it though. It just means that I can't see it accurately. Okay? If I want to find out what can be printed, I click on this profile pull down here, and I can select the profile that I'm working with. So here's one of my Roland profiles. I select this, and notice things change a little bit. We get a different kind of preview. We have more exclamation points, and we've also got a preview that shows a difference between left and right of this preview. what that is the left side is showing me the color as it would look in the Pantone book, and the right side is showing me the closest approximation of how well it can print that job. Now, in some cases, it's not very close. And if we double-click here, we can see this color has no warnings for our display. It tells us we can see this accurately on our display. But it does have a warning down here next to CMYK, and it's telling me this color won't print very well, and I may need to talk to my customer. They might want to consider changing the color if it's very important, or just simply be aware that with this particular job that they may not be able to get a very good match. Now, in some cases, you may find if you've got two vinyls, for example, if you try out the profiles to different vinyls, you may find that one of them can hit it. So if I try a different profile that I have here, I can see in this case I can hit that. This is just a different substrate that I've selected. So your substrates will determine what that CMYK build is. That's that number right here. How close can we get to it? And this one looks like it's going to be a pretty decent match. It will be different, but it's close enough that the customer probably will not have any complaints. Okay. Now, you can also do some other things in here. You can actually build your own custom palettes. I like to work this way. Here I've gone through, and I've already gone through this process of building this palette with the same colors that I have in this job. And it's pretty simple. The process is, go to File and say New Palette. You'll give the palette a name, and then you can start adding colors. And adding colors is pretty simple as well. You just simply click down here. Well, I want to pick these out in my solid coded library, and I can just scroll on down and find the colors that my client wants me to use. And when I locate them, I just drag and drop those up here. And now I've got a collection of colors that my client wants to use for his ad campaign, for his banners or whatnot. And I simply select the profile that represents the media that I'm going to be printing to. And just like I showed you before, I get warnings. For example, this orange 021, a very challenging color to hit. It's not going to be a very good match. There is, unfortunately, no way to mix colors on this particular ink and substrate combination to get a very good orange 021. On a different substrate, I might get closer, but this is the closest match that I can get there. Okay, so we'll keep that up here, and let's take a look at how we can use these numbers in the Versaworks Rip. So here I've got my rip. I'm gonna close this, delete this file. We'll come back to that later. All right. And in the rip, your spot colors are managed under the Edit menu in the Spot Color Settings. And here we can see libraries that are provided by Roland and others that we've created as custom libraries. Now let's take a look at these libraries that Roland has provided first. Okay. So we spoke earlier about the Roland Color System Library, and this library is all CMYK values. Now keep in mind that those CMYK values represent different colors on different substrates. So it's a good system that the values stay the same every time, but you need to go into your applications and change the spot color identified in the job before submitting it to the RIP, which is a perfectly fine way to work, but you need to do it prior to submitting the job. Okay. Then there's the LABE libraries, okay, that they provided, and these actually are not job specific or media specific. These will match these colors on the fly to the color appearance that's defined in those libraries. Okay. But for a lot of us, those don't include the Pantone colors, so we have to look at a different solution, which is what we're doing right now. Okay? We're going to look at the CMYK, adding a CMYK library. Okay? So here we're going to go to this little button right here. We're going to create a new library. And because it's media specific, I should make sure to use that media name in this library. I can actually even go so far as making sure that I know this is a Pantone library, and it's specific for my SP V2 Eco MH. I'm matching the name of the profile that I'm going to use this with. Okay. There we go. So that's the media profile that I'm going to use this library with, and I'm going to select CMYK here. There we go. So I now have this library. It's specific. It's my Pantone colors for this specific media based on CMYK. Now I can go over here and add a new color to that library. I've got the colors defined over here, and if I double click, I can get those values. Okay, and so here I've got a 5, 81, 93, and 1. That's for my Pantone 7580. Okay, and so I come over here and I have to give this the name. This is very important. This name must match exactly how it's used within my applications. Now Illustrator is Pantone, all caps, and then the number here, which is 7580, and a space and a capital C. Oops, there we go. All right, now that's important. If I use lowercase here or my spacing's not the same, the colors as defined in Illustrator won't match up to these colors. Okay, so I need to make sure those are right. Now, I've already got my numbers here, so I've got a 5, 81, 93. Now I've got a 1 here. Now to be perfectly accurate, to get the most accurate color match, I'd want to put that 1% black in there to get as close as possible. And for a lot of outdoor signage where it's viewed from a distance, that 1% is going to be just fine. It's going to make the color more accurate. But if you're doing signage that's viewed up very close, like point-of-purchase displays, that 1% dot, that might be a little distracting to see black dots scattered throughout this print, and so you may choose not to put that in. I'm creating banners that are going to be hanging up high, so I want to put that 1% in there because I want to get the color as accurate as possible. I just keep going through and I add my colors one at a time. So my next color here is my 3165. And the best match for 3165 is going to be a 92, 55, 50, and 23. And according to this, I should get a pretty good match. So let's go here. So I got 92, 55, 50, 23. There we go. I'm just going to go through and continue adding colors here. Now I've actually already built this library. If I click over here, actually I have all those added. Okay, but you see it's not too difficult to get the correct values now. You just pull them out of Pantone Color Manager and put them directly into the library. Okay. Now, using these libraries, if I have multiple libraries listed here, and again you can see here I've defined these as these happen to be for this same media that I'm going to use. Okay. If I have libraries for different media, then I need to make sure that I only have one library on at a time, because these are CMYK and they're media specific. So if I plan on printing jobs that are going to be on this media, I need to make sure that the other one is turned off. Now this is all, as you can see here, these are all Pantone values in here. And so as long as I have Pantone color names, they're not going to use any of these libraries up here. Those aren't Pantone names. Only this library has the Pantone names in it currently. And that's the only one I have turned on. Now here's the trick. If I switch media on my printer and load a different media, I need to come in here and switch this out to have the correct media library for the Pantone colors that I'm going to send to that specific type of media. Okay, so that's really the only kind of trick here, is make sure your libraries match up with the media they have loaded. Okay, so I've got that set up, and I can hit OK now. Okay, now to use this library, I'm going to double-click on my Q to bring up the Q properties. And I go down here to File Format. I need to make sure this little checkbox is enabled here, Convert Spot Color. If that's not checked, it will not use the values that are in that library. It'll use other values that will likely not get me a good match. I know those values are optimized because I got them out of my Pantone Color Manager, and it built those colors based on this profile, and I want to make sure to use those. So I check that little box there. Okay. So we're going to hit OK here. All right, so now I've got my queue set up. The media is already identified in that queue, and I need to open up a job and make sure that job is using those spot colors. Okay. So if I go to Add a Job, and I select my job that has my spot colors in it. There it is. If I double-click on that job and then go down to File Format, I see all the spot colors that Illustrator had identified for this job, and they're listed here. And because I had this checked, and because the colors were also built into my, my color library within Versaworks, I have these values associated with those colors. So anywhere in this file where I've got Pantone Orange 021, it's going to build it with this particular mix of magenta and yellow. And where I've got yellow defined, it's going to use this particular mix, and so on. Okay? So this will get me the most accurate color matches to the Pantone books that I have. If a color doesn't show up here that I had in my Illustrator document, most likely that's due to a naming mismatch, where perhaps in Pantone I had a graphic designer that typed in the name as, Pantone, which is uppercase P and lowercase A-N-T-O-N-E. If that's the case, that's a very different color name than just Pantone. Okay, so the name has to match there. Designers should use the Pantone spot color libraries that come with their applications in order to make this work. They shouldn't just create their own Pantone colors. That's where you usually run into problems. Okay? And so with what we've just done right now, right here, what we've provided is a solution. Let's go back here. A solution where we looked at Illustrator, we found the Pantone colors that were in that job, we've gone to Pantone Color Manager, and using the profile of the media we're going to work with, we've defined exactly what CMYK values we need to use to reproduce that color as accurately as possible on that media. And then we've gone into Versaworks, and we've defined in our spot color settings exactly how to match those colors on that media. Okay, so that's a simple solution you can do today. Simply buy a new Pantone Plus book. You'll have the software and you'll have all the tools you need. Okay, I'd like to talk to you real quickly about another option that you have to add colors, and this one will require a measurement device such as the i1 Pro. I've already got a library here that I've created with some of my brand colors. You see those listed here. Okay, and I'm going to make a new one. So we're going to click here, and I should give it a meaningful name, but I'm just going to give it kind of a generic name here. So here's my new brand colors. I need to define this as an LABE library because that's for measurements. CMYK is where we're going to get values from some other software. LABE is where we're going to actually take measurements in here. Okay, so we're going to hit OK. And so there's my new brand colors. And I can add a new color. And you'll notice in here we've got a couple new buttons and some different values to key in. We can key in stuff or we can just simply measure it. So like we talked earlier in other sessions, when you're calibrating your display or when you're profiling media, the first step is to calibrate the device you're measuring color with. Okay, so we click on the Calibrate button, and by the way, while this is calibrating, the i1 device has been selected already within our preferences for Versaworks. All right, so now we've got we're ready to measure, but first thing we want to do is key in the name of this color. So I've got in front of me a Pantone book. I might have, it's possible, let's say I do a lot of work for a client who has, their grocery store red or something like that. If they name that color in their application, say in Illustrator, grocery store red, A&P red or whatever, if you name the color within this library to match exactly with the color name they use in Illustrator, that's perfect. This solution will work very well for us. In this case, we're going to do a Pantone color. Again, we know that Illustrator uses all caps, a space, and then the number for this color, and a space and a capital C. That's Illustrator's naming convention. All right. And then we click Measure, and it tells us to go ahead and start taking a measurement of our patch. So I put my I1 right on that color patch and measure it. There we go. So what we get here is, again, what they call an LAB value. That is a definition of what that color looks like visually. It's not a mixture of CMYK. It's a definition of actual color. And when we use this library, it will actually find this color definition and then automatically map this to the CMYK required for the media you've got loaded based on the profile you've selected in your print setup. And we can continue measuring colors and adding to this library. And this can stay, you don't need to uncheck this one because it will actually adjust the color builds based on the substrate you have loaded. Whereas the CMYK ones, you need to make sure to select the correct CMYK for the substrate you have loaded. Let's hit OK here. And let's take a look at the queue again. And what I'm talking about is right here. When you select your media, it selects a profile. And automatically, if you have this box checked, it'll look in those libraries for the LAB value, and it'll map it or convert it directly to the proper CMYK that this profile is going to define. So that is actually a very elegant solution, but it does require some instrumentation. So we've got lower cost solutions that require just simply Pantone books, or a more sophisticated solution that will require a purchase of an instrument. All the rest of the process is the same. Okay, I'd like to open up for questions if anybody has any questions. We've covered basically the process here.
Okay, for the question and answer session, folks, remember to type it in the question window that's on the right side of your screen in the control panel area. If we have any questions for Mark. regarding any of the content he's covered today. We had a question earlier from Marie. Mark, will this method work in a program other than Illustrator? I also use Flexi to design as well as Illustrator.
Okay. So, yeah, the key there is, again, that the names of the spot colors match. So however you build it in Flexi, you know, Flexi has Pantone Libraries included there. Check to see how they name those. And I believe, I'm trying to recall, I believe Flexi actually does use the same naming convention as Illustrator. I would confirm that to make sure. But as long as the name in the file matches the name that we use in the library within the RIP, it'll work fine.
Okay, we have a question from Hunter. What about substrates from manufacturers that do not provide profiles for Versaworks?
Excellent question. You've got a number of obstacles against you if you don't have a profile. In fact, some manufacturers will actually provide you a media and suggest using somebody else's profile to get good results. And that really never works. Every media behaves differently with the inks, and you really need to have a custom profile for it. So there's a couple things. You could either stick with manufacturers like Roland provides media profiles for their substrates. Okay, that's an easy out-of-the-box solution. If you're working with other, if you need to use a media that Roland doesn't have available or whatnot, I would tend to go with manufacturers that do provide media profiles, so that you can get through it pretty much like it's still a pretty turnkey solution. If you have substrates you want to work with that no profiles are available, then your best solution actually is to get some hardware and software to actually make the make custom calibrations and profiles for that media. And that's we actually covered that in the last session as well. But that's really what you need to do there to get the very best color out of that media. And now that goes whether you're printing spot colors, in the case we talked a lot about today, or even your imagery, your raster images. If you don't have good profiles, the raster images will not print correctly.
Okay, we have a question from Colin. I fail to see how this is any easier or better than the RVW system. Please explain.
Okay. Well, again, it's different strategies depending on your workflow. So the Roland color system is, print out the physical targets, and then you visually judge the match with a customer supplied sample or maybe your Pantone book. And in that scenario, you have to go into the Illustrator file and switch these colors. So if it called out for Pantone 285 and you determined that there was a Roland color that looked close to that, you'd have to actually switch that color to use the Roland color. And so while that method works very well, and in kind of like a lower production environment, or if you're not doing this very often, that's a perfectly fine solution. It'll get you good results. It requires you to go into that file and actually switch out those colors. So to change that Pantone color to the Roland color to make sure that the RIP finds the correct Roland value to reproduce that. Again, not necessarily better, but just different approach is with the Pantone Color Manager. What you're doing is you're building a library of colors that actually stay in the RIP, and you can keep adding colors to this library, and that library is defined to match that media. And so as you get more and more jobs from the same color customer, first of all, you don't have to go in and tweak every job from that customer. Their colors are already built into the RIP within this library, and as long as you select the library, you'll get those builds correct and you'll get good color matching. And the way I would work with it is, as you get more and more customer colors, is just keep adding those to the library. You add them to the library once, you don't have to touch the job file, it's in the library, and that's going to keep growing. That library will keep growing for that particular media, and eventually you'll be adding fewer and fewer colors, because if you get repeat business, and we hope you do, those colors are already in there. So the first time around, maybe not a whole lot easier, but every subsequent time you print work for that client, their colors may already be in the library, and you don't have to add it a second time. And then the last step I gave you with if you're using the i1 Pro, that method is even more sophisticated in that, yes, you still have to add it to the library once, but once it's in there, it's good. And what's really cool about the i1 solution is you're building a library that works with all of your media, not just that particular media that you had loaded, so you're working with CMYK values. Okay, so the LAB is going to match the color on every media that you have loaded.
Okay, we had some questions here regarding pricing and availability for the i1 Pro. Where can they get it? How much?
Okay. I'm terrible with pricing. If you go to the x-rite website, we do have a store up there where you can find pricing for this, and it's also available to a number of other dealers available out there. I don't believe we have any special promotions on the i1 Pro at this time, but if you would like, Dana, can we collect people's contact information, and I can follow up with specifics if anybody needs information on pricing?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we can follow up with that. Also, while we're talking about pricing, we do have a few products, a couple products that are available for a limited time as part of this event. We've got the Pantone capture device, which is a smaller, low-price instrument that can be used to measure anything, whether it's the side of a truck, the paint color of a truck, a coffee mug, a mouse pad. You can measure these things, and it'll give you the closest Pantone value to it. And it's very portable. It's a nice electronic fan book, basically. And then, of course, we also have the Pantone color bridges available right now at a discount. And we will email you with information on that stuff later today. Okay? Any other questions?
We have a question from Nathan. Is there an equivalent to the Pantone warning regarding what colors can actually be printed when measuring spot colors with the i1?
Okay. Let's see here. If I pull this up, it's let's see. I can look at if I had and I didn't set up this that way, but if I had set up these colors as LAB, in fact, there's a delta. Let's no. Let me think here. If I had a color that was out of the gamut of this printer defined as LAB, I would get a little indicator in this window that would show me that I can't hit it. But that I would only get that on a job-by-job basis. I wouldn't get that when I take the measurement. The reason is when we build that library, let's go back to that library real quick. Remember the CMYK, these are all built on a specific media. My LAB, this library has no idea what media I'm going to print it to, and so it has no way of judging is it in or out of gamut of any particular media. But there too is if I am building a palette over here, if I know what the color is, I can tell it. But that doesn't help with the measuring of those colors. Sorry, I don't have a solution there for you.
Okay, we have a question from Steve. Can you copy the library?
On a job-by-job basis.
Question from Steve is, can you copy the library that is created from one computer to another? Oh,
so the libraries that we built in our Versaworks? Absolutely. Yes. We can, using this button here, we can save this, this library to a file, and then we can pull it into another Versaworks system and load it back in. In fact, that's a really good point to bring up. As you start building these libraries, you're going to invest a little time taking measurements or keying in values and building these libraries, and with any system, it's a really good idea to have some sort of backup in place. And I'd recommend save this library and put it on another server. Maybe it's backed up regularly. And if something should happen to the computer you're running on, you're running your RIP on, where it would go, the hard drive perhaps fails. When you reinstall the Versaworks, you can then import your library back in, and you're up in business again.
Okay, let's see other questions we have here. We had a question from Jim. The Pantone 206C color mark measured was substantially different from the Pantone lab values in the color monkey.
Oh, okay. Checking my work as I go, huh? Okay. I would have to take a look exactly what you have there, but now we are working with different instruments, and we've got different Pantone books, okay? And my book is pretty new. I honestly don't know how old yours is. It may also be fairly new, but I'm measuring with an i1 Pro, which is a little bit higher end device than the Monkey. The accuracy is a little bit better on the i1 Pro. The Monkey's not a bad device, but there's a price differential there, there's a quality differential. The other thing to keep in mind on the Pantone books is those are printed on a printing press, and there will be some variability from book to book. It's no different than a regular print production job on a printing press. Some are a little bit lighter, some are a little bit darker. It does vary slightly, and so if I had a book that on average was slightly darker and yours was slightly lighter, we would see a little bit of a difference there. Okay. And then again, the age of the book can definitely have an influence on those measurements.
Okay, another question from Jim. Are there lab values present in Pantone Color Manager?
No, Pantone Color Manager doesn't provide the lab values. They only provide the CMYK matching to the profiles you've selected.
We have a question from Randy. What is the difference between the i1 display, the i1 photo, and the i1 publish?
Good question. Okay. So the i1 display is it's actually it's an inexpensive, small, high-quality display calibration and profiling device. Its only purpose in life is for displays, so it is of somewhat limited use. If you've got other tools, or if you've got good media profiles, like an example I gave earlier, if you're purchasing Roland media to run on your Roland printer, you already have good media profiles, so you really don't need a device to measure colors to make profiles, although it might be nice to have a device to do like we did here today, where I can measure my Pantone colors directly into my libraries. So that if you don't need to do those things, then calibrate your display and use the available profiles and get pretty good results. The i1 Photo and i1 Publish are different flavors of profiling software that allow for different types of calibrations and profile, or actually more accurately, just ICC profiling for different kinds of devices. Photo is intended for the photo market, primarily for RGB, RGB printer profiling, and Publish allows for RGB and CMYK. I would recommend check our website out. The product, the i1 Publish, the newest i1 Publish has a very good description of exactly what's included within the software. And if you would like, you can contact us, and we can go over what you're trying to accomplish and figure out which system works best for you, because it can be a little confusing because there's so many different kinds of things people are doing.
Okay, we have a question from Joe. Do you know how accurate the Pantone Color Q instrument is?
Okay. The color cue, that is an older instrument. I can't recall. We discontinued it a little while ago. It was meant to be an inexpensive, quick solution to get, in the ballpark with colors. But its level of accuracy wasn't great, but it is an inexpensive device. Okay. Currently, the capture device is a much more accurate device, but there too, again, just to kind of keep everything in order here, the capture is a very good device to go out and do quick measurements of color and see, what the closest Pantone color is to that, but it doesn't replace an i1 Pro, for example. Okay. The level of accuracy is going to go up with the cost of the instrument. The technology required to get accuracy is just inherently more expensive. So how close do you need to be? If precision is not an absolute requirement, but you just want to be in the ballpark, you can get away with a less expensive instrument. If you're working with very high-end, say Fortune 500 companies that are looking for the most accuracy, unfortunately, that level of accuracy has a higher price tag it's associated with it.
Okay, are there any other questions before we wrap up? Looks like we have another question from Hunter.
Okay.
Mark, could you show that promo one more time?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so while we're waiting for Hunter's question, by attending the webinar today, there's a limited 3-day offer, which includes, for free, the Color Manager. So we'll make sure we send that out in a link, and that offer ends Friday, March 2nd. So limited time, act now. It's a really, really good resource to have, the Color Manager, for those of you that are interested. Let's see, question from Hunter is, what file format works best with Versaworks? That would probably be JPEG, TIFF, PDF, or EPS.
Yeah, actually, one real quick addition to that, though, is a very good point you bring up there. If you're doing the spot color matching, that's going to require something like the EPS type format. It's going to need a vector type of format. If you save out, if you do this stuff, say in Photoshop, for example, those spot color names are not carried across. So the spot color naming is only supported working in Illustrator and then saving out a file format like EPS.
Yes, Hunter was looking for some clarification on PDF. PDF and EPS work very well for vector.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, we're approaching our 10 o'clock close time. If there are no further questions, then I will let Mark wrap up. Again, the promo ends Friday, March 2nd. You'll receive an email today with the promo on it. And remember, the promo code is Roland3, R-O-L-A-N-D, and the number 3. I'd like to thank Mark Gundlach from X-Rite for talking about spot colors today. This series is being recorded, and we hope to have it available at rolanddga.com/webinars, either later today or later this week. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a great day.